What are psychological operations? PSYOPs for short. If you were part of one, would you know? Could you recognize a PSYOP in front of your eyes and see it for what it is? Welcome back to another show, folks. This is the video that I was talking about that I had already recorded, but I decided to delete it and do it over just to give better context. Yesterday, I spoke about propaganda. Now, propaganda and psychological operations actually go hand in hand. If you read the definition, it says psychological operations, PSYOP, are operations to convey selected information indicators to audiences to influence their emotions, motives, and objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of governments, organizations, groups, and individuals. Right? So you could see the part about the information and the influence. Right? That is where the propaganda piece comes in. So these two things, they go hand in hand. What I'm going to do, or attempt to do rather, is try to give it to you in the simplest terms that you would understand, so it will be clear to you what it is, and you could probably see it when it's happening in front of you. A lot of people would say that right now we're in the midst of one of the biggest psyops ever seen. That's possible. With technology today, it is possible. Who knows? We can't say for sure. But how many of you know Alex Jones, right? And his recent court case where he has to pay some 960 something million dollars in damages. The funny part about this is that both things are seemingly a psyop, right? Because I'm assuming from the decision that, okay, he was found guilty, but he didn't do anything. He just said something, right? So what he was saying was that the event didn't take place, and that's a popular misconception. You see, a successful psyop can take place where there are real live casualties. Because you have to remember, the people running these things, they're not really concerned about collateral damage. The end justifies the means. If what they want at the end goal, yeah, people can perish. It's not that everything will be, a false, with makeup. No, people can perish. And that is a very popular misconception, which I think has gotten a lot of people in trouble. They think, oh, well, yeah, it's all fake. No, it's real. It's a psychological operation on you, the viewer. But yes, there are people actually perishing. And that's the sad part of it. But as I said, the end goal is to get to where they want the rest of the people to be, to get these governments to make decisions, enact laws, etc. Right? A lot of people have said the exact same thing about a lot of events, mass casualty events. So let's say 9/11. Oh no, it was fake. Well, you don't live in New York. Now, I personally was not down there. I went to school down there. And let me tell you, it was real. My mother was down there on that day. She worked down there, right? And she's one of those people that, mysteriously came up with shingles and then cancer, sometime afterwards. Didn't get a penny, right? A lot of people died from, the toxic dust and all that stuff. Say, well, people really died, so yeah, it was real. Yeah, but it could have still been a psyop towards an end goal. What's the end goal? It's always control and to make people do what they want them to do. Now, who's the them? People who have military training, um, Psychological operations is actually an arm of the military. If you want, you could look it up for yourself. They have several different patches that they wear on their uniforms. Obviously, when they're carrying it out, they might not be wearing them, but some of them, if you see them in the field in other places, like let's say in a foreign country, you would be able to recognize who they are by the patches they wear. Now, that's not always the case. It's not always active military. It could be ex-military, right? But if you have the training to carry out something, an event that's going to change policies in a country, you obviously need the proper training, right? And the fact that civilians are going to perish in this event, it's a calculated risk. Sometimes it might be better for the PSYOP to go through on the other end as fully planned if it does happen that way, right? Now, the reason I have this video up here is because of what I just mentioned with Alex Jones, right? He and Ye and I think Nick Fuentes had this discussion which has set the internet on fire. He said a lot of things that were offensive to a lot of people. Now, the issue is still and always will be the First Amendment. That's the issue. You see, you can say things that are supposedly offensive or be parts of a group like the KKK that's supposedly offensive. But if you're saying that and you're not actually telling people, hey, I want you to go out and do blank. I want you to be part of this movement where you're going to do blank, blank, blank. Then you ask yourself the question, well, then how did Alex Jones get himself in court? Well, we live in a very litigious nation. I just heard that Drew Brees is getting sued by a Venezuelan environmental activist over his lightning commercial. If you can imagine that. Drew Brees did a commercial where apparently he got struck by lightning and someone took such offense to it that they're suing him because of that commercial. Now, do you see where we are currently? Now, the Young Turks, they'll say, oh, we're such in a bad state, and Kanye West is a Nazi. I listened to their interview. Not once, not one time in this almost 16-minute back and forth did they mention any of the atrocities committed in Africa. Why? Because it's a bunch of Negroes over there, a bunch of black people, so, not really relevant. The Holocaust, oh, they mention that a lot. Yeah, but that's just one event. How many people were killed under Chairman Mao? How many people were killed under Stalin? Under King Leopold? There have been a lot of these types of events, but everybody keeps referring to just one. Now, the issue is some of these events are just war. What sets them off? Well, it could be a psychological operation like Vietnam. It very well could be. But you have to do your due diligence and research. You cannot take everything for granted that people are going to tell you the truth. Everybody has a spin. Everybody has an agenda. Obviously, these two on the screen are extreme leftists. They might not say that, but they are. If you listen to this interview, you will hear them mention the right, the right, the right. Okay, so if you're not conservative and you're not part of the right, then what are you? If you're calling for people to be involuntarily committed, then what are you? These two are no better than that trainer. You have to involuntarily commit to somebody because they said something you don't like that rubs you the wrong way. Now, let's be clear. My comment about Alex Jones and the decision to make him pay that money, in my opinion, both of them are one and the same. Because how do you get a person to pay that much money off not actually committing a crime or an act of violence? You see what I'm saying? Like, where does the First Amendment come into this? Like, I understand. Maybe you wanted him to apologize. Maybe you felt like he offended a lot of people. But then you drag him to court and make him pay this large sum of money. So, what does that say to the public? That says to the public that if you say something somebody doesn't like, you can be dragged to a court, have a large decision against you, and basically have to, well, if you're wealthy, maybe you'll be able to pay it off, maybe you won't. So if you're not, you end up with nothing but the clothes on your back, if that. That's the time that we're living in. I'm not going to play this interview because it is just, it's more of the same. But like I said, if you understand this meaning here, right, just in basic terms, but also understand that these things are carried out by people, usually within the confines of government or with blessings from people within the confines of government, in order to have an effect on the emotions, motives, and objective reasoning of the masses, which would be myself, which would be you, the viewer. So we see something happen out in the public and we're like, oh my God, that's crazy. All these people, you know, that is so sad. And then some sort of bill hits the floor, or it goes up on the ballot and we all vote, yeah, we support that. Meanwhile, whatever you saw might have been real, but it was set up that way by a small group to get you to view things a certain way and then possibly vote a certain way going forward. And incrementally, these things just add up. The more and more you give your freedoms away, then you have nothing left. And that's usually what they use. They use propaganda in concert with psyops. Now, as I said, a lot of people think right now we're in the midst of one of the biggest ones ever. It's possible. Anybody that knows anime, and I only know this because of my two sons, my 14-year-old and my 9-year-old. There's a show called Naruto. There's this character that uses something called genjutsu, right? It's like a sort of sleep-in state where you can experience like the most heinous things. This would kind of be the equivalent of that, but in awakened state, right? So it's a genjutsu on the world. You're awake and you're seeing it, and like, man, I must be dreaming. This whole thing is crazy. No, you're right in the midst of it. So, I hope I did a decent enough job explaining what a psychological operation is, how they're conducted, why they're conducted. Of course, you don't always know the whom, right? You think that they might be current or ex-military, could also be private contractors. When it's being carried out, 9 times out of 10, you will not know. Maybe 10 times out of 10, you will not know, right? Because there will be real people perishing in that event. So don't think that, oh, it's a false flag, it's not real. No. People die. as I said, people do pass away. There are casualties. Might not be always a lot, could be a few. Sometimes, you know, it varies. Depends on what the end goal is. But you know, I don't know who watched that whole interview. Of course, Ye said a lot of crazy things. He went off the rails, but I think that is part of what I'm discussing. I don't know if he's part of one or if he's pushing his own for like a certain agenda. It could be. You know, Sank and Anna from the Turks will say, "Oh, he's dumb. He's this, is that." No. Ever since those shows got canceled, anybody that watches my Drink Champs interview, when that happened, I think that's when he went into that mode that, okay, so he's at war. And if you understand anything about, um, where is it? Maybe it's here. Um, if you understand anything about being at war, oh, wait. You understand that psychological warfare, it's part of it. See what this says? Different types of psychological warfare include manipulation via leaflets, radio, or other media broadcasts, visual intimidation, fake social media accounts, and use of propaganda to encourage an enemy's surrender or terror. So, there you have it. You look it up, it's right there. So, you take that for what it is and you see things through a different lens now that you've been informed. And I hope I was able to do that. So make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe, share it with other people, and of course, drop me a comment if you feel like it. All right. Until next time, peace, and I'm out.